okay, so I'm going to read it to you because it was very wordy and I don't want to have to read the whole thing. But it says, a number. The word yom is used in the context of the scripture. A number and the phrase, evening and morning are used for each of the 6 days of creation. So in the translation, it's there as morning and day. The reason why it's designated that later, because remember, there was no order of time. So he's saying, okay, this is not going to be, because now, remember, he had to put the stars in the sky and the moon in the sky, and then he had to put the sun. So therefore, he has to differentiate what's morning and what's nighttime. But the day, the number is in the word yom. So when you go to the Hebrew, you see it 1, 2, 3, like in order.
It actually means time.
Right. It's a space of time. I'm just saying it in the English, like kind of like.
The same word appears in Genesis 4:3. Read it. It says, and in the process of time, it came to pass that Cain brought the fruit of the ground and offering unto the Lord. So at a specific time, Cain brought fruit. That word time is the same word that is used in Genesis.
Which is the word yom, which means a day. So on a specific day, so you'd have to read it like in Hebrew, but I'm trying to translate it every day. And so when it's translated for us, it has to be kind of redundant and say, okay, this is the morning and the evening, because now there's light and now there's, okay. So the next attack or the next falsehood is something called the Cambrian explosion. Tell me if you've ever heard of it. I had never heard of it in my life. Who had? Very good. Hold on. I'm writing weird, so I'm gonna abbreviate. All right. Who raised your hand? Brandon or Nathaniel? Okay, it has to do with that. Now, in that era, or supposedly, it's related to something specific. Go ahead, Brandon. It's okay. It's in relation to fossils. Now, okay, I'm glad you said that. All right. The Cabrion, this is how can I explain this to you? I had to read this like 3 times to explain it to my students without them getting bored and saying, what is this? Okay. The Cabrion explosion is a two-edged sword. It defeats the evolutionist theory, but at the same time, it's an evolutionistic way of thinking, or Darwinistic way of thinking, or anti-God, anti-creationist way of thinking. I'm going to explain it to you. The Cabrion explosion is this. There has been fossil evidence that does not show that all life evolved from a single common ancestor through minor changes. Did you hear what I just said? Okay, I knew I lost you. I lost at least 3/4 of you. The fossil evidence, okay, this is taught, despite of what most of you have been taught in school, the fossil evidence does not show fossils. Do you know what a fossil is? What's a fossil, Andre? Right, it's bones that were engraved and stuck in the earth, like it's just basically and preserved there. And so it's embedded, and that's what it is. It shows, you can see from it some history, time has passed, how many years have passed. It's like a trunk of a tree that you cut down and you can see how old the tree is. Okay, so it does not show that all life evolved, listen to me, here's the contradiction, from a single common ancestor through minor changes. What does evolution teach? What did we start at the beginning? I'm helping you go back to elementary school. What does evolution teach, Ali? That we all come from something that evolved, right? Like, so we were a monkey, and now we're not a monkey, and then, and of course, the reason for that we don't continue to be another thing is because billions of years, there's always an explanation, billions of years have not passed yet for us to see that we might be evolving into something else. So maybe one day I'll grow a tail again, or whoever, your kids, your great-grandkids. That's what evolution teaches. Is that not right? Is that not what we've discussed? Well, the Cabrion explosion says otherwise. It says it's like a little mini Big Bang. It is. It's a Big Bang about fossils and animals. And what they say is that an explosion occurred, and all of a sudden, a bunch of animals, just a bunch of them, all kinds, just came to be. Now, we have a problem with that. 2 problems. One is you're contradicting now what evolution says, but it's opposite of creationists. Then, the other problem is that that's ridiculous. because that's like saying that out of nothing, something now has a brain, something has a heart, something functions. So if there's no evolving from one ancestor, then now you have a conundrum. You know what a conundrum is, Karina? I know, I saw your face. Say the word conundrum. You have to roll your tongue. Conundrum is like you're stuck with a puzzle or riddle. Like it's a problem, a difficult problem to figure out. That's a conundrum. So what are you going to do with that Cambrian explosion? So what ends up happening is paleontologists, these are scientists that study history of life on Earth through fossil discovery. Okay? I didn't know this. I had to look it up because I didn't even know what that was. A paleontologist is a person that studies history of life on Earth through fossil records. That's what they do. So what they say is that they have to agree that virtually all major animal forms appeared suddenly without any trace of less complex ancestors. I'm reading it to you. It's here. No new body plans have come into existence since then. So let me understand this. Somebody out of somewhere decided that an elephant, a horse, a platypus, a hamster, a ferret, I know, Lola, a parrot, a fish, all of it was going to be like that just one day. It just happened just one day. Then, no other master plan ever was come up with again. This never happened again. It's like a freak of nature. Okay. Does that sound weird to you? Javier, does it sound weird? Very good. Okay, so I was wondering because you paused. All right. Now, this is also known as the biological Big Bang. By the way, this Cambrian explosion is known as the biological Big Bang. Yes, Ali. Go ahead. No. It's not either or. It's independent of. So it's not like I studied this to see if they agree or don't agree, but there's a contradiction because they say it about each other here. They say it. There's a whole period of it. I could get into it, and I'll tell you after class because I have it all here. It's just really long. I don't want to bore them with that. But I'll give it to you. It tells you that this happened and all these things occurred. And this all happened in a 24-hour day, by the way. Mm-hmm. So T.S. Kemp, and you can look it up, is a curator of the zoological collections of the Oxford University Museum of Natural History. Blah, 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 blah. This is a long title, but it's an important one. All right. He had to admit, he said, with few exceptions, radically new kinds of organisms appear for the first time in the fossil record already fully evolved. So in other words, with few exceptions, they've never been able to discover something in their records that shows it being evolving all the way to its fullness. It's just like suddenly it was there. What does that mean? If it was suddenly there and they found the fossils, it supports creation. Absolutely. 100% it supports creationists and their beliefs because it's saying we don't see them changing. We just see only what the end product was, which God said, let there be light. Let there be fowls of the air. Let the fish fill the sea. Did he not? On his command. So it's so much easier. When we go back to the movie, Case for Christ, so much easier to believe in him than to disprove him. Now, we go back to this, to what he was saying. And he says, it is not all that one might expect. It says they find them with their fully evolved, with most of their characteristic features present. In other words, the fossils didn't show any evidence of being evolving from other species. Now, this is really, like, it's okay, this is so boring. Okay, it's boring, but you need to know it. You know why? Because this is why it's so easy to influence people. Because people are out there listening to people telling them professors that have a degree and they seem so important and it must be right and he has a degree. But what they're saying is foolishness and you're gobbling it up because you don't know in your head, is that true? Could it maybe be true? That's how the devil starts. The devil knows better than anybody that God exists. Oh yes, he knows that God exists. But apparently we struggle with that and he knows it. So he takes advantage of it. That's why I'm telling you all this petty information so that you're equipped to know. Now, although, and I'm not even gonna, you know what? I'm not gonna read it to you because your mind's gonna go. Another evolutionist called Stephen Jay Gould from Harvard, a person with a tremendous degree, admitted everyone knows the fossil record does not provide much evidence for gradualism. Gradualism is slowly changing. How they said that, turtles were once something else, or like a frog really was a fish, or a lion. I don't know how a lion became a fish, but it was, or whatever evolved. We were a gorilla at one point, an ape, or orangutan. Yes, you were ugly according to that. So they're saying it doesn't support it. These are people that believe in it, and they're saying it doesn't support. So that's a theory called the Cambrian explosion. Now these gaps, there's also gaps, and this is what I want you to pay attention to. There's a lot of gaps that are attributed to the imperfection of the record. In other words, the records of the fossil fuels that they discovered, the reason why there's gaps and they can't find those other animals that evolved into it prior, it's because, they say there's not an adequate explanation. They just say it's an imperfection of the record. It's actually written like that. It's an imperfection of the record. What?
So the earth, in other words, the earth discriminated.
Yeah.
It fossilized.
Yeah, the earth decided not to fossilize this, but it fossilized that. So it fossilized the lion, but it didn't fossilize the thing in between the lion. Like us. It fossilized us. Not us. It fossilized the monkey, the gorilla, the ape, but it didn't fossilize the, what's his name? The Neanderthal, the one in the middle, the one that looks like a man but is half ape. Yes, very attractive. Anyway, so moving on, it says, so according to the evidence produced by paleontology, which is the discovery and study of fossils, the scientist's guide to whether or not evolution is true is life did not evolve gradually over a long period, but simple to complex forms. Instead, the fossils show exactly what we would expect to find if biblical creation is true. Very important. Did you see what I said? No, I know you didn't hear it. This is what they say in the end of it all. The people that believed in this, they said, the fossils show exactly what we would expect to find because they don't believe, biblical creation is true. All the major animal groups appeared fully formed, all at one time, genetically separated into kinds, which is in the Bible, Noah's Ark. What did they say? From each species, 2 by 2. And with limited change. Now, this person goes on to say, and I don't want to read it to you because it's boring and it sounds very textbooky, so I'll say it in Keila's way. This person, this other scientist, goes on to say, his name was Richard Dawkins, is another scientist, and he said, bottom line is we're stuck. We have two groups that believe differently about this. And both groups would have to admit that when it comes to fossils, that creation did exist, that a God created it. However, he says, it's funny in the same sentence, however, both groups will basically deny it and say creation does not exist. So basically, we have to agree that that's the only answer left, but we're not going to say that that's the answer. We're just not going to say it. Like a little child, we're just not going to do it. Right? We're going to agree to disagree, but leave it like that. How can you be a scientist and just leave it like that? But this is what you're being fed, and your children will be fed, and your children's children will be fed, and you will gobble it up. Just like we want to erase things that didn't happen in history, that is no longer in your history books. I'm shocked at some of the things that I found out that no longer are in your history books that actually happened. That's sad, because they happened. Why are they gone from the history book? Whether it's good or bad, it needs to be there as a reminder of what we were, what we can avoid and not be. Why would we erase history? That's insane. That's like saying, I'm going to erase my grandfather because he was an alcoholic. I don't want to know that he existed. Well, he should be there to remind you not to be one. Like, that's silly. And this is what you are being bombarded with in little manners, in little small ways that I wanted you to understand. Now, this is good. Charles Darwin, and through time, even evolutionists today have kind of discarded Darwin a lot. He really stuck his foot in it a whole bunch. But in his famous book called The Origin of Species, he says this. This is before the Cambrian explosion was declared. Before, look what he says. He says, one of the fatal flaws to his theory of Darwin, he said, is that exactly what we see in the Cambrian explosion. He says, the abrupt manner in which whole groups of species suddenly appear in certain formation has been urged by several paleontologists as a fatal objection to the belief in the transmutation of species. In other words, he is saying, this belief, he didn't know about it yet, But this belief is basically saying that what I say, evolution, can't be real. The gradual evolving of creatures. So,
Now, what does the Bible say? In 1 Corinthians 15:39, it says, all flesh is not the same flesh, but there is one kind of flesh of men, another flesh of animals, another of fish, and another of birds.
very good. That's
the Bible.
super clear.
1 Corinthians 15:39.
Very clear. Science, very good, thank you for that. Now, another thing that is attacked is our common ancestry. And I'm actually almost done. Now, what is our common ancestry, Nathaniel? What do you think it is? Something that's attacked is our common ancestry. Just in general, but it has to do with the study, but in general, what is the attack on our common ancestry? Anybody would take a guess? Walter? Very good. What about Adam? But if it's an attack on our common ancestry, then what do you think they would be saying? What do you think? Yeah. One thing is that Adam is not a real person, and that was at the beginning of my study, and I didn't bring it because I thought I'm giving you overload of information, and it's very, if this was a very practical class, I would take my time and keep on going. But it's just a lot of information, and I don't want to overwhelm your brains. That's why I'm giving it to you like a spoon, because it's heavy duty information. I had to study, like take my time to try to condense it so that you can understand it. But Adam, there's a whole belief out there that Adam was not a person, that Adam was a fictitious person. And so I can go back to you, and again, you would say, well, why are you telling us this if we believe in God? Because there are churches that actually believe and support that. You have to understand, it's creeping into Christianity. It's creeping into Protestantism. It's creeping into religion. Because you know what? It is to appease the masses, to keep people in church. A study was just done recently, and I want all the young people to hear me about this. A study was done recently, and this makes me very sad, because from teaching young people so long, you see how statistics change. About 10 years ago, they did a statistics study in the United States, Christianity, just Christianity. And this was like during 9/11, around there. 80% of people said they were Christians. 80. Now, please do not tell me, but they didn't live it, they were not Church of God. That's not what I said. I said that they have Christian principles. They believe in Christianity. They believe in Christ. They believe that Jesus was a man, but was God, and he died on the cross for our sins. They believe that. That's Christianity. Okay. Now, there's a study that was just done. I just read it like a month ago. And it was surveying young people. Like back in early, I would say, babe, what was it I told you the time frame? Do you remember? Early 2000s? The amount of young people that they asked specifically, do you go to church? Not Church of God, church. Catholic, Jehovah's Witness, a mosque, a synagogue, a temple. They asked them. The percentage in 2000, at the beginning of 2000, was about 74%. Whether they believe or not, they went. It's not the issue. Okay. They just did a survey of young people, which is so enlightening and eye-opening to the times that we are living in. No, it was just mostly teenagers. It wasn't like, I wouldn't say in their 20s, but it was a range. It was like a late teenagers, because any teenager's not gonna want to go to church, please, since 1920. But later teenager to like the early 20s. It was a young group. And theirs is, the percentage was, it is hot in here. I agree with you, Adria. I'm hot. I feel hot. Anyway, 44%. They also talked about attention span. I'm kidding. Early 2000s, 74% went to church. Now, it's 44%. Now, this has nothing to do with the Church of God survey, This has to do with the world in which you are living in. Because anything that is related to God, spiritual, is being attacked on every level. And the devil's not stupid. You think that he's just going to attack the Christian side of the Church of God doctrine and that's it? Oh, no, no, no. He wants to make sure that he gets at you all the way, in all aspects. Now, it starts with what I'm telling you now. It starts at school. It starts when you're young. Now, it pains me to think that children don't have a say, so they don't know better, and parents don't know because they're not in the classroom, what they're being taught very, very subliminally, but it is happening. And it is a big deal. There are people in the United States now fighting against the school system for that reason, because they're making their children be subject to things that they shouldn't be teaching at all. It is not their place to teach. School is a place for learning, not for you to give your opinions and all your things. And so now more than ever, I've always been a firm believer that most kids should go to public school so that they can learn how to interact socially, and because, you know, everybody likes private school for many reasons. You know, it's easier and you don't have to. But now, oh, if I had a kid all over again, I would try my best. I would probably eat peanut butter and jelly and try to get them into a private Christian school as fast as I can. Because the bombardment is so great. It would take your influence as a parent 24/7 to make sure that it could override what a teacher and the friends and those parents that are godless are also thinking. It's a big fight. And you might look at me and say, what does that have to do with me? I'm not getting married right now. I don't have kids right now. But you eventually will. What's happening now, and I'm addressing all of it all at once, and my husband and I have talked about this many times, is that if you haven't noticed, in the last 15 years, the age of getting married and having children has shifted. See, Lali's one of the last few that came in just in time in that group. I got married when I was 18. Am I telling you that's the best time to get married? Absolutely not. I'm not going to sit here and pass judgment on that. But it is a different time. So what happens now? Now there's a gap. There's a huge gap now of people that didn't have kids yet, that are not grown enough, and you're waiting longer to get married, which is great, because think about it. Yeah, you should. Think about it real good before you do it, because then you end up in divorce, and you want, what do you want, divorce number 3? So think about it. But then there's a gap now, and this is a generational gap, a big one. And this affects you in many ways. Right now, you don't care. You're like, oh, I'm not going to have kids until I'm 40. But the day's going to come, and it's going to happen. And then, what are you going to do? You don't have a basis? You don't have this? Even if you're not saved, you want somebody teaching your child something that you know yourself that's not true? I would never want that. If I didn't even come to church ever again, and I didn't want to serve God again, I would never allow somebody to teach my child something that I don't believe in. No way. No way. That's like trying to teach somebody that the boogeyman exists. Oh, that's stupid. You know, I wouldn't let that happen. Then why do you let this happen? Why do parents let this happen? Because this is the boogeyman, pretty much disguised. Now, going back to my last point, common ancestry. Walter said it, that is it, because people think that Adam did not exist. Now, Adam is mentioned in the New Testament and is compared to a major figure in the Bible. Brother Wilmer, who would that be? That's right. Adam is called the first Adam. Jesus is called the second Adam for that reason, because he was a real figure. Okay, now, let's talk about practical things. Why is this important? Science is finding additional evidence that what the Bible tells us is true. All of mankind is descended from one man and one woman. An article in the U.S. News and World Report stated that researchers suggest that virtually all modern men, 99% of them, says one scientist, are closely related genetically and share genes with one male ancestor dubbed Y chromosome Adam. They've done a test. I'm not a scientist. These are genetic tests that were done. It can trace it back. We are finding that humans have very, very shallow genetic roots. There goes the billions of years out the window, which go back very recently to one ancestor. That indicates that there was an origin in a specific location on the globe and that it spread out from there. That started in 1995, that study. Pretty cool. I thought y'all would be impressed by that, but you're not. Okay. According to the New York Times, and this is my last statement about it, in the new genetic studies of modern human origins, scientists think they have found strong evidence that there was an ancestral Adam about 188,000 years ago. Again, there goes the billion years out the window. To go with the previously discovered Eve. So, in a nutshell, we all come from the same mommy and daddy. We all share the same genetic street. Any questions? None? I think I know what's going to happen. Go ahead. It comes back that researchers, well, they're going to suggest it because it's a lot. I mean, when you're talking about things that could affect that, but this came from like a very, how can I say it, non-biased source, and it was published in the U.S. News. Researchers suggest that virtually all modern men, 99%, they gave a percentage, and this was one scientist that was actually saying it, are closely related genetically and share genes with one male ancestor, dubbed the Y chromosome Adam. They don't know who that Adam was or where he's buried, like that. But it all goes back to that one Y chromosome. Go, Ricardo. He's going to answer it because he said it last time. What did he say? Like, where's he coming up with that number? Discoveries that have been done, all that ties into it. That's why there's a gap between how old it could possibly be and how old it is. But for sure, it's not a million.
The evolutionists, those numbers of billions and hundreds of millions are just guesses that they suppose it was, because they figure, well, how can this have happened? And what happens is that they don't have on their side is the scientists. They don't believe the Bible. They don't believe the flood. But when you realize the event of the flood, you understand a lot of what you find in the earth.
But, yeah,
Carbon dating is
that's a big thing.
the best form up until now of truly accurately measuring and dating things. And carbon dating, every scientist will tell you, nothing to do with religion. It's pure science. Cannot date past 10, 15,000 years. That's the best carbon dating to do.
You're welcome. Okay, Nathaniel? Because when it's in Hebrew and it's used in the context that they did, and they did the study, and every single place in the scripture, that's why I said there was two sides of it. Not only is it what I told you, which means that it's accompanied with a number and evening and morning, night. So making sure that it's not just a vague space of time, but it says morning and night. It says that. It's not just the word yom. It's yom, the number, and morning and night. And the rest of the Bible, wherever it's used, which is actually in a real story where it's a day, like it says it, and you could tell it's a day, it's exactly the same exact translation. So what I said was, why would Genesis be the exception to that? Because that doesn't make any sense. That's like saying, you know what, you and I use a word all the time, and then, but you know, it's an exception if I use it on Monday. It doesn't make any sense.
And it's really important, again, like I was saying Sunday, we miss a lot of things when we don't understand the people custom.
That was very true what he was preaching on Sunday morning. I didn't realize that the way the Hebrews explain things are not the way we do. Like, we do it chronologically, but they do it like in categories when they're explaining a story, which is kind of weird, but that's their culture. So it is true. You could look up something directly. I know because I work with Jews, and when they're telling me a word, they're like, listen, they'll tell me a word, like they'll say, that's menchi. Like, it's funny. Like, that's so, there's another word that they use. It's funny. Yum kippy. Yeah, they'll say kippy, go kippy. Well, kippy to them is like a thing you tell your child to go to bed, but it doesn't really mean, the word kippy doesn't mean that. It's just an expression used for that. Menchi means like you're like a mameto, you're like a good old boy. But that word menchi doesn't really mean that. It's the way the Hebrew culture uses it. So the way the Hebrew culture or the Hebrew language, it's not just, you can't just get the word and isolate it. Yes, it does mean those things, absolutely, but it's accompanied, that's why I said it, with morning and night, which means that it defines it's a day. And the rest of the Bible, where it's obvious that it's a day, I mean, there's just no, then you can't say, oh, well, in Genesis is an exception. That's the problem.